Welcome, everyone. I know that it's probably hard to take time out of our very busy days at this time of the semester to meet with us, but we so appreciate you joining us. And given the feedback form from last time, it seems like some folks are learning a lot already, and we've only had one meeting. I think you are going to be so excited to see what Jessie has to share with you today. I'll just remind you of a few things. We do have a feedback form. We got about 40 responses last time, which we so appreciate. And I'll drop the link in the listserv message to just remind you all about that. It just helps us to make good decisions for you moving forward. It's hard to have good discussions with so many people, but we're trying. Also, I did get some information from there was someone in the feedback form who just wanted us to let you know if there's going to be an interactive piece to the meeting. And I really appreciate that because I'm also some days not feeling very social and some days more willing to participate. But because this is a community of practice and we really want folks to be interacting, it's not just a time for presentation. We'll try to have an interactive like breakout room piece during every meeting. So if that's for you, if you need to mentally prepare to do that, I guess this is your encouragement to just be prepared at every meeting. We like to have we are trying, in a normal community of practice, it would be a lot smaller and we would have opportunity for everybody to talk more often, but we're trying to be intentional about making sure that we have time for folks to explore ideas and to get to know other people in this community. And I think already it's been very positive. So I guess this is something we want to make sure that everybody's prepared in the future. So I do take that seriously, and I want you to know we hope that you will be willing to participate when we have those kind of breakout rooms. The other thing is, I'll just say this now and I'll do a follow-up email as well, but we are recording this session and I am learning how to edit videos and post them on YouTube. I think I was successful last time, so I'm going to do that again this time. So people who are missing this meeting can watch it or even review the work. I actually had my boss look at Amber's piece from last time. She loves it, Amber, by the way, if you're out there. And I think we might even hire a part-time short-term person to help us create some stuff for program review in SharePoint using what Amber showed us last time. So I just want to, that was an immediate good feedback for us. Also in October, we have 4 members who will be sharing about their use of Power BI, which I know a lot of folks are really interested in. Jessie Johns is putting that together with those 4, and I sent out this Google Doc and I realized that I'll put the link in the chat, don't worry, and I'll send it out again. I didn't realize when I created it that it wasn't editable. I meant for it to be, but I think access to things is my kryptonite. So I will send that link out again for you to add questions. Jessie, I think, might be sharing a little bit about Power BI today as part of her overall presentation, which has a lot of integrated pieces. So I'm just going to turn this over to Jessie and stop talking. So go for it, Jessie.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Stephanie. That was a great intro. Hey y'all. I am going to be presenting a bit, and this is kind of how this group got started, which is really exciting. But I'm going to be presenting about how our department and Division of Student Affairs is utilizing a bunch of different Microsoft tools. I do have a PowerPoint that I'll kind of go through just so I can stay on track and give y'all some campus context, some things about what I've learned throughout the process and everything else. But if we have time at the end, I'll kind of show you what it looks like in action. I will have a spot for questions at the end as I'm pulling up that Power BI showing you what it looks like. But if you have questions as I'm going through, feel free to drop them in the chat, Stephanie. I will ask if you could help moderate that for me. That'd be great. But we can go ahead and get started. Give me 2 seconds and I can share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Great. Okay, perfect. All right. So utilizing the Microsoft Suite. So today I'll cover for us give you just a little bit more context and introductions of who I am, path to our current process, and then how we're currently using it. So what it looks like right now, plus some things that I've learned throughout the process of I've been building it. I think that's always really helpful to hear. And then where I want to take it in the future and kind of what we're doing with this next assessment cycle. And then if I were doing this, where I would start as well. So again, my name is Jessie Johns. I'm the current coordinator for Student Affairs Assessment here at the University of Missouri. I work within a team of 4 called Strategic Initiatives and Assessment. So we are a shared service for the Division of Student Affairs. I will show you what that division looks like in a second. But we report directly to our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, and we are here for every single office and department within the division. Just to give you a little bit too of campus context around data and assessment. So campus overall as an institution, our president and chancellor of the system, Moon Choi, he has a very high value on data, specifically on making sure that people have access to it and that we are making data informed decisions. And that's slowly starting to trickle down to all levels, including the academic side of the house as well as the student affairs side of the house. Within our own division, our vice chancellor has set the expectation that all levels, so regardless of your entry level all the way up to director and her senior leadership, you should be engaging with assessment and data collection. We're seeing this also a lot in my own team's workload. So staff are increasingly engaging with assessment and wanting to do assessment more than just things that are ad hoc or just because we have to. They're starting to really be interested in it, which is also really exciting. So we're hopefully starting to cultivate more of that culture of assessment. Our division, this is a lot of an org chart, I know, but I just kind of wanted to give you a context for where we sit. My director is Ashley Graybaugh. You'll see her directly up under our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, but we work with everybody within this org chart when it comes to assessment, as well as all the levels underneath those, like Senior Director, Dean of Students, everybody. So it is sometimes a lot of meetings, but that has been really fun because we've been able to kind of work across all areas. We are doing our assessment and what I'm about to show you on this assessment cycle. So we actually just finished up all of our meeting ones with everybody that you saw listed. We have this process, we do it through KPIs, so key performance indicators. I will tell you right now, as we're going through, we have a very loose definition of key performance indicators, and y'all may, if you are a true KPI person, you're going to be like, those aren't really KPIs. That's okay. Post COVID, and I'll get into this in a second, but we really wanted to get people back on track with keeping track of data on a regular basis. So we really kind of started it with what are you being asked for pretty regularly, and also what helps inform if you're doing your job well. So as we've gone through the process, we've started to tighten that up a little bit, which has been nice. But anyways, how did we get to where we are with what we're using? So I started about 3 years ago. So in this post-COVID world, Ashley really wanted to work on ensuring that all departments got back to regular measurement. People were doing things a lot ad hoc, or they weren't doing things at all. And kind of getting through and surviving with hiring freezes and things like that. So we started doing that through those KPIs so that tracking and submission of results were all on individual spreadsheets. We had some problems with that as we started kind of coming through, because as you saw, there's lots of different departments that we're working with, and so that's a lot of individual spreadsheets. There was a disconnect too between departments' daily work and the division overall. Some people saw how their work fit in with the division, some people didn't. Also too, even disconnects between their department goals and where the division strategic plan was, things like that. And that also became kind of difficult for our team to show at a glance, here's where everything kind of melds together. I think sometimes it's really easy from us as an assessment perspective to see how everything fits together. But when you're in the work day to day, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. And then two, for people such as our Dean of Students, our Executive Director of Health and Wellbeing, who had multiple different areas reporting up, it was hard for them to see where their reports were falling, as well as were they making progress on their own goals. And then two, it's just a lot of spreadsheets. And I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but I have also accidentally deleted somebody's spreadsheet, and I was trying to avoid doing that in the future. So we were just kind of trying to figure out what we could do. So in our solutions, so we started trying to figure out if we could find something that was pre-made. Most of the pre-made things were way too expensive for our budget. This was going to be something that was only going to be housed within the division. We, as a division, couldn't shoulder the cost of some of these pre-made softwares, and so we started to explore what we could do natively. Conversations, and I will give a very quick shout out. My father, who works in IT, also prompted me to start looking at Microsoft products. So thanks, Dad. But conversations with him led us to start looking at our Microsoft suite and what was included in our Microsoft license. That also included some conversations with our IT folks, our MU Analytics, which is what our IR is now, institutional research is now called, and starting to talk with them about some things that they had been doing and kind of seeing what could work best for our division. So currently we are utilizing the following Microsoft products. So we've got SharePoint, which we talked a little bit about last time. So we're using SharePoint, but specifically we're using Microsoft Lists. It's just it's something that SharePoint can do, and we're just using the list specific interface for SharePoint. I'll show you what all of these are in a second. And then we're pulling all of that into Power BI. So currently, we're using SharePoints and lists. So there's some things that we really like about this, and I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. So one, I really like from our vantage point, we can define relationships between data pretty natively. So I can include a department's KPI, and then I can link that to a preset list of all of the department's goals. And so I can align it to that department goal, and I can also align that to the divisional goal. So we can see all of that. And so then two, I can export some data and I can filter by all of these things. We are a small enough group as a division where we can house all of this within my team's own SharePoint page. So we've just been housing it all within the Assessment Strategic Initiative SharePoint, which has been really nice. There are some list rows limits, but I will say they're like 40,000 rows plus. So depending on like what level of how much data you're trying to track, you probably are not going to reach that. But if that is a concern, I just want to note that for you. I also really liked that I could assign levels of edit access. So for instance, I have full edit access. I could delete columns, I could delete views, all of this other things. However, I'm able to grant edit access to people so they can only edit pre-existing items. So if I want to preset what the view looks like, if I want to preset what people are able to do and kind of like how everything's structured, they're only able to edit the information that's being presented to them, which has been really nice because that gives us continuity between lists. So again, from from my team's perspective, we're able to find what we need to quickly, but then two, it also means later I'll show you, excuse me, when I've appended some tables together, it makes everything merge together very beautifully. It's also nice because all these Microsoft products are speaking together and we're able to import this information to Power BI so we can have this interface that's applicable for everybody. And then two, again, with this consistency, we're able to start writing language to see changes over time with KPIs, which has been really exciting. So from a building perspective, there's two different things that are going on. So I have lists, and I'll start with the divisional level. So at the divisional level, I have 4 divisional lists within my SharePoint that I only have edit access to. My team does as well, but I'm really the only one that's in there playing. So I have a list of every single department within our division. I have a list of our Division of Student Affairs priorities, a list of department goals, and within that department goals list, I see relationships to each department and their connection to the divisional priorities. And then I also have a divisional office strategies. So at one point in time, our departments were asked to come up with different strategies for the different divisional priorities. So I have that list there. I will be honest, that list hasn't really been touched, so it may be sunsetted after this time, but it's in there if I needed it. At the department level, every single department's list is set up this way. So we have different outcomes types. So whether it's support, program, or learning outcomes, we have a spot for the KPIs. And then there's a section for timing, use, stakeholders, so they can write in who needs to be informed of this data. We have sections for the fall, spring, and full year. Notes, so if they want to add any context or talk about how they pulled the data, if they made any changes, things like that, they can put that in there. And then two, within each department's list, there's relationships to the department goals, the divisional priority, and then hidden from them but visible for me is something that where the department name. That is what's feeding my security, and I'll talk about that security in a second, but it's in there. So what do they look like? So these are some examples of the divisional lists and what they're looking like. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the departments list. So as you can see, it's literally everybody's just listed out individually. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see that department goals list. So you can see there's this goals name right here. And then it's got, I have it sorted by the department name as well, but you can see I have a lookup. It's a SharePoint list term, but I have it connected to these divisional goals, so those divisional priorities, as well as the department names as well. So it's also just nice because for our team, when we're meeting with people, we have a very easy central spot where we can pull up these goals. And so if we need to update or change them, we can do that. I'll also point out for y'all that I do have a goal. That's not really a goal listed for every single department. If you can see up under accountability and support, I have something called OSAS core function. Essentially, we created this because the way SharePoint works, I had to put a relationship to something in every single column. Like you can't leave something blank when it comes to something like this. So what we did is we made this core function section. So essentially, if there's things that we do because we are required by law or because we're required by policy, or they're just things that we have to do regardless, they don't line up with a goal, but it's part of our mission. We can bucket it up under that core function. So it's got something that speaks to it, but it's not necessarily goal specific, which has been pretty helpful. From the department side, this is an example. This is from our disability center. So you can see there's that outcome type, the title, source. So that's that data source, the timing and use. We have those preset, and I'll show you all these at the end, but we have those preset with options, again, just to provide continuity. So they have the option of choosing whether it's something they're measuring on the academic year, semesterly, is it fiscal, is it an other? Because we do have some systems that have different years. I don't know why they all do that, but sometimes they do. So we have that option, and then the use, so they can choose how they want to use the information. So maybe it's program improvement, maybe it's for marketing and communication purposes, whatever. Stakeholders, they can choose to list who they want to share that information with, and then again, that notes. But again, you can also see I have the department goal and the divisional goal listed there for them too. So when they're in there inputting their information, or if they wanted to take a look at it later, there's a direct correlation between these daily things that are happening for them and then where it lines up to the department and divisional goals. So how we're using it right now, so divisionally, the four main lists that I mentioned, so like those goals, the office names, things like that, they're static. I'm the only one with edit access. However, I do have it set so everyone in the division can view it. There isn't any information in there that would be secret, is the best word I can think of right now, but there's nothing in there that's confidential. So I just have that open for all for viewing purposes. At the department level, the departments, they are edited by each department. They have access via Microsoft lists. Departments can only see what falls within their scope. And again, I've assigned security based off of the department's name. And within Power BI, I'll show you all this in a bit, but everybody's lists feeds into one big table. And again, I have it assigned based off of that department name. And so if I work in the student health center and I log on, I'm only able to see the student health center information. Whereas if I'm the dean of students and I have multiple areas, I'm assigned to all those different areas so I can see just my areas. So that's been helpful because I can just create one thing that everybody has access to, but it's access based off of what you actually need to be able to see. But then it's also ease of use on my end and from my team's perspective because we just have one big thing. So how are we using it within Power BI? We are using Power BI to house the information from those department lists long term. So there's a new list every assessment cycle. We're about to start our second year with these lists. So there will be a separate table with our old information that'll just live in there in perpetuity. Did I say that word yet? Yeah. So it'll just live there forever. And then two, this is really to show those connections to those divisional strategic plan. We are in the process of updating our divisional strategic plan to make some of the metrics a little bit more actionable. So as we continue to do that, we can align some more of the KPIs that the departments are doing to those specific things and kind of show progress on that. Excuse me, but it's also to show how student affairs is fitting in with the overall institution strategic plan. Sometimes we get questions from some people depending on who they're interacting with of like, this is great and all that I fit in with student affairs, but what about the institution? So I have a page in here where it talks about where the student affairs priorities and strategic plan align with the institution. So if they need to be able to show how we're all fitting in together, they can see that it's there, it's easily accessible, but some people use it, some people don't, but I just like to have it in there. But I mean, ultimately as well, this has been really helpful because it gives a big picture and progress to our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Division Senior Leadership, and also to staff. The idea is that they can see how these things that we're tracking have been able to change over time. And then two, they can see here is the progress that we're making. We are making progress, and it doesn't feel as like I did this thing and now this data point is now in the ether. So from a Power BI perspective, and I know our presenters next week will talk a little bit more about this. So if you're like, Jessie, I don't know what the heck we're looking at, that's okay. Don't get too hung up on it. But I did want to show y'all what the data model is set up as. Again, the department lists are appended into that single table. It is there to keep my refresh rate faster, and then it's also just many more less connections to fail. They're all appended into that Mizzou Student Affairs table that you see down in the bottom right-hand side. Again, you can see at the top that departments list, that's what's feeding my row level security. So that security piece that I mentioned of you're only able to see with what department you're assigned to and what you work in. Each department has a SharePoint assigned ID number. Everything you put into a list has a SharePoint assigned ID number. Whether you choose to use it or see it is up to you. But because that department's list is present across every other list that I have created, it's able to feed that security, which has been really helpful. And people are added to that via viewing for Power BI. So some things that I've learned that if y'all are going to do this, that I would highly recommend you figure out ahead of time instead of after the fact like I did. First, just kind of defining that flow of information. Does something just add context? Does it influence another data point? Is it a if A, then B, whatever that might be, but just defining that flow of information was something that took me a minute. And it was once I figured that out, it made it a lot easier to figure out how all my pieces were going to fit together. The other thing was understanding how security groups work at your institution. By security groups, what I mean is your IT, whether you realize it or not, may have these mail-enabled security groups. So if you've ever emailed, for example, like a big staff and there's like a staff email, sometimes those are security enabled. IT will usually set those up and do that with IT and HR. So I'm able to add that security group. IT and HR have conversations often and keep those up to date. So then I don't have to add people individually, which also helps with that security piece. I'm still in the process, I will tell you all, of figuring that out because it is not a clear process here at the University of Missouri. And depending on your own interactions with your own IT and HR, it may not even be clear at your own, but starting those conversations sooner rather than later. And then two, again, those relationships for things that don't quite fit, that core function piece really helped us do that at the department level. And then I do have that divisional core function listed too, just so there's that divisional alignment as well. So allows us to really meet each department where they're at. And so it does also makes it where it's not one size fits all. You have to force fit everything into a goal or something like that. But it's also been helpful because we've had some departments that have had interim leadership, or there's been some turnover, so they want to kind of reassess what those goals might be. So I'm able to assign it all to core function, and then we can keep it moving and grooving, and then we can kind of adjust as we need to in hindsight. But those relationships too, they can always be edited and they can be changed, which is helpful. So it's not something once you set it, it's set that way for the rest of your life, which is really nice. So, from a future perspective, where we want to go. So, divisionally, as I mentioned earlier, we are making updates to our divisional strategic plan to try to track metrics more accurately. For example, one of ours, as you'll see in a second, is increased student learning, which is great. And to what degree? What are we trying to do there? So we're trying to make those a little bit more actionable so we can kind of see progress on those specific goals. I'm also working with divisional senior leadership to make dashboards that are more actionable to them. So what that means is making a view that's specific for my dean of students, making a view that's specific for the executive director of student health and well-being, whatever that might be. So then it really meets their needs and what they're doing. And then two, we can make sure that their goals are represented there and they can see progress on their own goals. At the department level, we are continuing to refine people's KPIs, again, trying to make them more actionable, more measurable. Ultimately, I would love if everybody had targets for theirs or at least a baseline, but we're not quite there yet as a division, but that's something that we're kind of working on and making changes as we go through each iteration. I'm also working with our IR analytics folks in trialing and writing that language to show changes over time for people's individual KPIs, just because I do think that's really valuable. And again, as we're having more information that is being generated, we can store, we can start to see and show those changes. That has just been because I've taught myself everything I know about Power BI and Microsoft products, as a lot of us have. It's just been a little bit slower sometimes, and that's okay. So if you were wanting to start, some things that I would recommend, really kind of thinking about what information actually needs to be kept. So again, what could those relationships be? What is that flow of information? If you're trying to understand what that flow of data might look like, I really recommend you think about doing a systems context diagram. Essentially what that is you just map out, it can be on a piece of paper. It does not have to be fancy, but if someone puts a data point in or someone does something, where does the data go? What does it have to go through? Does it go through people? Does it go through systems? Where would you like it to go? What could that look like ideally? And that can kind of help you figure out where it is you might need to start. I would also recommend that you sketch your data model on a piece of paper as you're trying to figure some things out, using those identified relationships, either from the systems context diagram or just from like you thinking everything through, because that can kind of help, again, help inform your model, help you inform where can I append tables together? Do I need to append tables? Where does it go? And then two, to avoid circular relationships, some sketches made me realize that I was creating circular relationships. And the issue with those is if you do those, you're going to have errors and things aren't going to show correctly. As far as resources that really have helped me, the on-campus IT and institutional research knowledge has been very helpful. I will say the university has put a lot of effort and emphasis into putting in data analytics overall, such as we have a chief data officer now, we have a data governance person now. So I do realize I'm a little bit spoiled when it comes there. However, even IT has been super helpful. And most of the time, I've just found if I ask the question enough, somebody usually gets back to me, which has been nice. I will also say too, Microsoft Learn has been really helpful. There's an AI learning path. So you can go onto Microsoft Learn, tell it what it is you want to know and or what you want to do, and it'll map everything out with pre-existing Microsoft resources. And then two, online resources have been super helpful, such as forums. And then I've also used AI tools like ChatGPT to help me understand what my errors are. Because Power BI loves to give me an error every once in a while. And I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from. And that has been where ChatGPT has really been stellar to help me figure that out. But as far as kind of some overall tips as well, if you are going to do those lookups, so those relationships between data points and the different lists in SharePoint, I also really recommend that you pull in the item's ID number with it. I'll show you what that looks like. But that's just helped on making sure that things are consistent across the board. And again, if you are going to be using that security, that row level security I mentioned, that ID number is what's going to be driving that. I've also included an all data view that's private just for me. So just for those people that are managing the lists. Again, that's also been helpful because I can make sure all lists are laid out in the same format. It doesn't have to be fancy and it doesn't have to be super pretty, but it's just been nice to have that there. I have a sticky note sitting right in front of me of what order all the columns should be in for that all data view. So it's been really nice. And then again, too, limiting edit access to just the individual items versus the full edit access. That full edit access is going to allow people to change the view, be able to add things, which if that is your intention, go forth, conquer. But with this, because we were trying to append everything together, I really needed people to only be able to edit the items. And I learned that one the hard way. And then two, you can set up SharePoint lists from an Excel table. So I set up a table template to begin with. So I was able to import that Excel table. So all of my lists were made very quickly. And that was also helpful because again, that consistency piece, everything was in the same order. And I just didn't have to go in and manually do everything. And it made it much simpler to append tables together. So, those are kind of my big tips. I was going to pull up what this actually looks like in practice within Power BI and also show it to you within Microsoft Lists. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen while I do that. But I don't know if we had any questions from anybody / in the chat.
Yeah, Jessie, thanks so much. The question that was in the chat was about the kinds of data, and I thought you were going to display. So if you're going to display or
Yeah,
show us the kinds of data, then I think that answers part of that question at least.
perfect. Yes. So I can say it and then I'll also show you what it looks like. So within the lists, it is numerical data only. That was also partly because we were having people put in, for example, the disability center. So they wanted a breakdown by academic college. When it was previously in an Excel sheet within the singular cell, they had listed every single academic college and then the total number of students that were engaged in the disability center. So, for example, arts and science had a colon and then it was like 250 or something like that, which is fine. But that also makes it hard to kind of look at things overall because you have 15 different data points within a single Excel column. So to do that, we separated each thing out individually. So it's utilization by college and then colon arts and science, and then it's just the singular number. I have it set within SharePoint. You can set SharePoint columns to only accept certain types of data. So I have it set just to numbers only for the results categories in an effort to get people used to just putting in that data point. If there is something that's more qualitative based or text based or kind of more of that summary, how did we pull it? What does it tell us? We've been encouraging people to put that in the notes field. Again, just so it's got a spot to go in and it can be there, it can be tracked, but it's not necessarily in those results. So hopefully that answered the question there. But I will show y'all. So right here. So this is what the interface for Microsoft Lists looks like. You can see all the different lists that we have created within our own SharePoint. It just makes it kind of easy because you can see it at a glance and we have these all favorited. But we have those static ones that I was talking about within the divisional levels. So we have our division goals right here. This is just what it looks like, nothing too fancy, but you can see that ID number right here. And then it goes back for me, department goals piece, you can see that is listed here. You can see where it's been looked up or that relationship is established to those divisional goals as well as to the department's name itself. I have it sorted right now by the department name. So again, this has been helpful because I can collapse all of these if I would like to, but I don't have to. That all data view that I was talking about, I have that established as well for the divisional pieces as well, just to ensure it's consistent and I have it if I need it. So under that all data, you can see where I have the ID that goes with each of those different relationships that are already established. From the department level, I'll show you through Mizzou Rec. So again, you can see these different outcome types, title, where they're pulling the data from, the timing, use, etc. A couple of things that has been really helpful for the adoption of this as a system, especially we came over to this from Microsoft Excel. Everybody's very familiar with a spreadsheet. It's nice that you can edit this in a grid. So again, it becomes very similar to Microsoft Excel, but there's some differences which have been nice from my perspective. So these outcome types, this is a drop down. So I can let people choose a singular drop down. Source, this is open text that they can put in. Timing is a drop down. So here's the options. Same thing with use. And then these divisional goals, I have this because it's that relationship to that divisional goals list. It becomes a drop down as well. So say the director of Mizzou Rec disagreed with where I thought this KPI went with, he could choose something different, which has been really nice. From that results piece as well, you can see the fall, spring, full year. Those are also done as a number. So if I tried to go into here and type in words, it would give me this error, which has been nice. So you can only put in something that's a number. What's also been nice, if you don't want to edit like it's a spreadsheet, you can click on these three little dots. And people have really liked that you can edit it like a form, which also makes it feel really much more official than an Excel doc does. So that's been really nice. And then I also like it because as we've been having meetings with people, I can leave comments for myself or people can leave comments for me, such as these that I left from 2024. These do not carry over when you copy the list. So that is just kind of a note for yourself, but it is nice because you can even at people on it and it'll send them an email notification that they got mentioned on this list. So sometimes I use that as my little running to-do list. But again, that all data view, this is private just for me and my team. But you can see where I have those numbers that are being pulled in with those relationships from those ID numbers, which has also been helpful to include. And you'll also notice that the department name isn't present on any of the views for the individual department, but it is there in secret and private for me and the row level security. So I'm also going to pull up Power BI. And then while I'm doing that, don't think you'll want to see the notes that I have for a meeting later today, but what other questions do y'all have as I'm pulling that up?
We have a couple of questions in the chat, but the first one is just what is the relationship between your division level assessment work and the university level assessment work? Do you collaborate in what ways, and how does your work connect to regional accreditation?
Yeah. So the connection to the institution overall, that is really done out of my director's office as well as our vice chancellor. So typically is pretty, we need this data point or we would like to see this data point. And so then when we were able to gather it and provide it, we did recently go through our HLC on campus accreditation visit this past year. And this was super helpful because we had a lot of information that the accreditation prep team was asking for. So, but again, I wasn't really super involved in those conversations. So that was more of my director, but this did make it easy because we were able to pull much of what they needed on it very quickly. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Also, Nancy Smith asked how many people worked on this. I was gonna answer for you, but I thought better to have you answer. And how long did it take from like a, yes, we're gonna do this to the pilot or implementation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nancy. So actually, I am the one that created this from the ground up and did it all. So just myself, so it is possible. And so it started from me kind of trialing it, piloting it, and then to actually do it for implementation. I will say, I will tell you this length of time, but also know I was not working on this solely, but I worked on it, I think, off and on all last summer. And so it was ready to go for our assessment cycle last year, starting in September. So I'd say it took about 3 months, but I've been working on it on and off as we've been going through, just making some updates and tweaks. And then I haven't made as many updates as I would have liked to this past summer, just due to other things that were going on in the division. So I'm gonna be working on it as we kind of go through this assessment cycle.
So Elise or Alice asks about how many people have access across all the department level lists.
Yeah. So if you're asked, just to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, if you are asking about who has like view all access to every single department, that would be my team, our vice chancellor for student affairs, and then her direct reports, which is a total of 7, 12 people, I think, if I did math correctly. And so that is everybody altogether. We are also currently missing on, or we're working on establishing data governance rules for all of the information within student affairs with our data governance officer. So we can formalize that a little bit more. And then also too, as we think about partnering with our academic friends and then our friends across the institution, we kind of have some set processes. The other thing is too, the idea is that we can eventually put some of this information within the data warehouse if it needs to be, and the data warehouse can work as our kind of governance person.
Jocelyn Chong asks, can a department or unit view KPI changes over time? And I actually have a question about that I'll just piggyback, and that
Okay.
is kind of, I know this is your first full year doing it, and this is the start of your second year
Yeah.
implementing. And so kind of how, like, does the system that you've set up have the flexibility to move from year to year? So I guess both questions, how can you move from year to year? And then can somebody see the changes or the KPI changes over time?
Yeah, that's a great question, both of those. So I'm currently trying to write that into Power BI so we can see it that. And so the departments would be able to see that as well as their middle director, if that's the right person, or the vice chancellor could also see changes over time. I do have it set up so for those divisional goals that are more metric based, I'll show you this in a second. You can see changes over time through something that is within Power BI. It's called a scorecard. So you can see it already there, but I'm trying to do that for the KPIs. So not yet, but we're trying to get there. And then as far as year to year, yes, it does have the capability to do that. So what I've been doing and what I'm prepping for is for this next round, I'm actually going to be updating and republishing everything that I'm about to show you just as a solo semantic model. And then each department, as well as our vice chancellor, can have their own dashboard that would be, excuse me, personalized to them and their needs, but I'm just working off of the same semantic model. And that would include previous year's data, and it can be just the one, since we've only done, this will be our second full year doing it this way. And then it can continue in perpetuity. So that's what that's where we're trying to go. So yes, but not quite just yet, because I'm still teaching myself how to do some of this. But I'll also show you, this is kind of what it looks like within the Power BI space. So I have it set up currently. This is not how I want it to live forever, but that's okay. We've got this introduction. People can see when kind of what things are As I mentioned, that connection to the Mizzou overall strategic plan, this is just text. I just have it linked here. And so it doesn't have to be interactive or anything like that, but I did want that information available for people if they so chose to look at it. So that trend change over year for the divisional purposes, this is what I was mentioning about that scorecard. So we have a divisional goal to increase student sense of belonging with an emphasis on student populations with lower sense of belonging. Within our current strategic plan, this is predefined on what different student populations that might be, how we want to measure it, and things like that. So I'm able to include that progress, and we also have a final target. This is nice if you are doing something like this. It's called a scorecard, again, because you can include some updates. So you can see, people could drop this down, see what is going towards this. They can also subscribe to updates from this metric. So if someone wanted to get an email update every time this updated, they could get that notification. It's also nice because you could add notes if you wanted to, and you can also view it. So you could see where one entry was, where this most recent entry was. You can see what the changes looked like over time. Some of these are blank because I've been playing around, and you can see what the time period is. So you can also set like what the tracking preferences are for this goal and things like that. Um, and then again, same thing with the student engagement. So we have this set from our student experience survey. This is something that is housed and done with outside of our office specifically. We have a Power BI dashboard set up for the survey for the results. And so I actually have it connected to that Power BI dashboard, which has been really helpful. So every time that dashboard updates with new information, this goal will update. So again, it just kind of relieves some of the manual work there. For the kind of those strategies, those other things, this is kind of where it's been really helpful for us. So you can filter based off of all those different relationships I have established within those lists. So if I wanted to see, such as, for instance, my team, if I wanted to see what our strategies were to support the division strategic plan, you can see them here. Filtering based off of that department, then also filters based off of that divisional goal. If I see every single department listed here because of my viewing access to this dashboard. If I was viewing this just as someone who is a member of care team, I would only see care team as an option within this department name, which is super nice. Same thing when it comes to this department name, department KPIs by department goal. It's just another view. This is an option for people. But again, if I was assessment and strategic initiatives, they would only see what we have put in. And those would be my only options. I can't talk today of what people would be able to see. And then I just have this is just a table form of the other, like the list that I just showed y'all within SharePoint and that Microsoft Lists interface. So it's not anything fancy. Again, I'm trying to write that language so we can start to see changes over time. It just is a little bit more finagling than I'm originally used to within Power BI, but that's something that I'm working on with Liam, who's one of my good colleagues within MU Analytics. And again, as we kind of figure out what works best for each individual department, that's when we'll make updates. So that was a lot of me talking, but that's where we are and that's what we're doing. I am happy to answer more questions. I know we've got like 10 more minutes and I don't know what else people had in there. So Abigail, yes, so currently it only shows this current academic year. I haven't finished making those updates yet for this upcoming assessment cycle, so upcoming academic year. I wanted to finish meeting with everybody to make sure we had any adjustments to people's KPIs established before I recreated those lists. But I will also tell you the nice thing about that lists interface is you can actually export it to Excel. So I'll be able to export it to Excel, make any adjustments that we talked about, and then I can re-upload it into Microsoft Lists. So it'll automatically pull everything in for me. It'll include the same data in the same order, everything else, which is super nice. And then I can just go in and edit my views. So now that it's done within lists and in Excel, it'll be pretty easy. And then moving forward, this dashboard will include previous years and previous cycle years. So I've also got that established, so people will be able to filter by what was going on last assessment cycle versus this assessment cycle, and then they can kind of edit from there. Yeah. What other questions do y'all have?
Jessie, this is my question
Mhm.
because I've been at many institutions and we're constantly reorganizing units. So
Yeah.
my question is, the way that you've set this up, if the Division of Student Affairs reorganizes and offices move to recombine or change names or, move in and out of the division somehow, uh,
Mhm.
how do you accommodate for that in the way that you've set things up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, that was something I was thinking through. I meant, thank you for bringing that up because I meant to include that in our presentation. But our division actually just recently went through a reorg. Our vice chancellor previously had 11 direct reports, and now she has 5, I think it is. And so, again, that comes with some reorganization. So, what I've done is the way it's set up is it's pretty easy to adjust that. Again, it's based off of those mail-enabled security groups. IT and HR update those every single Tuesday. That's an automatic process that they do. And because I have Dean of Students linked to my Dean of Students, even if the Dean of Students changes or her reports change, they're only going to be, it'll update automatically for me and I don't have to do it manually. The other thing that's nice is depending on say reporting, say I have an area that's now going to move to another area. It's been really cool because I can slide it over pretty easily and just update where that department ID number goes to. That's been really helpful for me from an organizational standpoint to have everything linked to that department table at the very top. Because then I've also been able to kind of break those down further. So, for example, our Center for Student Involvement has this area called student engagement. There's lots of little sub areas within student engagement that seem to move around somewhat frequently. So I went ahead and broke those apart by the little sub areas. So then as they reorg, I can also move them around a lot easier. So I found that the more, um, I don't, finite maybe isn't the word, but like the more minute I've gone with like the department names, again, I can adjust it and we can add whoever, whichever security groups to those department ID numbers. That's been most helpful. And then too, with that reorg, that's one of the reasons why I'm updating it to just a published semantic model that I'll be able to make dashboards from, because then any updates I make to my semantic model will automatically update every single dashboard that's made off of it. So it also is hopefully a way to reduce the work for me on my end. Yeah. Um, and I did see the question about SIS. No, none of this is linked to SIS data. So this is all that's just been put in from the departments themselves. It may be information from SIS that they are putting into this, but nothing's directly linked.
Uh, I think mostly you're having your units report at the unit or program level, and probably there isn't a lot of student information, like student level information in there, or I may be making an assumption about that.
No, you're exactly correct. Most of it is being reported at the program or departmental level. So there isn't anything that's at the student level. My team is working on some things that are more student level, but they're going to live in a separate entity. So,
Yeah, and I'll just add to that same question about, I know, I do, I'm in charge of assessment, except for student affairs at my institution. So all of we have 300 and something academic degree programs
mhm.
and, over 50 departments and a bunch of colleges. So they are always changing their names and the org structure, et cetera. And so, um, yeah, I do find that I have to manually update anything that I'm doing
Mhm.
just by following the notes from the curriculum committee, et cetera. But as a student affairs unit, that's probably a little more manageable for you, I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, I think so. And I will say that I know Our analytics folks have done a lot, especially with the colleges and our HLC accreditation visit that we had. So I'm not quite sure how they set that up because they're always, I feel like, moving around or people are moving around, but I can always try and ask for y'all if you'd like me to.
We could probably take one more question if anybody has one. I don't know about you. I met Jessie, was it as about a year ago?
I think so, yeah.
Or so. And the first time I saw this, I was both excited and completely overwhelmed, um, which is okay for me. I don't mind that feeling. And I know there was a question here that I actually answered for you, Jessie, about your academic degree programs and academic units are not doing this
Mm.
at Mizzou. And it is something that I would like to do in my position. Maybe it won't be as highly it may be at a lower level than what Jesse's presented to you. And I think about things like, yeah, I'm also a one-person show. We do have an IR office. I do not, I will get a little bit of help from them, but this is mostly going to be me figuring it out. And maybe we can hire a student a little bit. I don't know, but we'll see when the time comes. I feel a little overwhelmed because this is all new to me, but I am interested in trying to figure this out for academic degree programs, except for our College of Business, which Crystal Brailsford has just noted. I work with Crystal at Colorado State University, and their college is working on this at her level, which I'm very excited about. Hi, Crystal. Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I mean, other than I think the presenters at our last meeting really got the bug bit for me because I started on LinkedIn Learning and did some SharePoint website learning tutorials. And as Jessie was doing her presentation this morning, I jumped on Microsoft Lists and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put our learning goals in right now, and
Yeah.
I'm going to do our learning objectives and then at least create that kind of format. So it feels very overwhelming, but I would say just start if this is
Mhm.
something that you're interested in looking at. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too, I know I threw a lot of information at y'all, and this is the summation of like over a year of me figuring this out. So, please let me know if you have any other questions. I'm happy to answer them individually or on the listserv, because I'm sure if you have questions, other people have similar questions. And yeah, I'm happy to help however I can. I think it's really cool and really exciting. And so this is too when Stephanie talked about kind of starting this group together. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So yeah, let me know what questions y'all might have.
And also, I know we're finishing up in this last minute. I will send a follow-up email on the listserv. And just know that I think next semester we'd like to figure out where we all want to go, break us up into maybe smaller groups and work on some of the more technical things that we want to do because not everybody wants to do the same thing. So I know if you're thinking about how do I even get started on this? Where do I go? How do I get permissions, etc. I feel like spring semester will be a good time to do that. So if you're thinking ahead, anyway, have a good day, everybody.
Yes, thanks y'all. Have a great day.